Welcome everybody to Talk That Talk,
Taking
where we have the unfiltered, unscripted, uncomfortable
Let's go.
conversation.
Taking down.
All right. All right. Welcome everybody to Talk That Talk, where we have the unfiltered, unscripted, uncomfortable conversation about band, HBCU band culture, music education, and more. I am your host, Jay Julian Luke, the owner and operator of the Passion Is Network. Also, remember, make sure you can go to www.realtalkthattalk.com and pick up any of your Talk That Talk merchandise. Just remember, once you get all your stuff inside of your box, you can go and type in the code HBCU band and you can get 30% off your total purchase. Hey man, to me, that sounds like a good deal. I mean, I don't know how much more I can make. I mean, 50%. I ain't gonna do 100%. I just ain't gonna do that. Anyway, man, let me go ahead and get into everything that's been going on. I'm gonna be real with you guys. It has been a lot of band this past week. I don't know if anybody has felt like it's been a lot of band, but it's been a whole lot of band this past week, and it's a lot to get to. So let's go ahead and get to it. First up to Batman. First of all, Dr. Sanford, he was definitely honored at the University of Minnesota. And if you don't know the story about Dr. Sanford was the first African-American band director in the Big Ten. And so they were celebrating him this past, it wasn't this past weekend. It was the weekend before last. I think it was either one of these weekends. Either way, they celebrated him and they actually played his Motown medley that he wrote. And I thought one of the most dopest things about that whole situation was just the fact that, now as arrangers, a lot of us are writing everything via Finale or Sibelius or anything like that. He wrote all of those arrangements by hand and they sound pristine, man. And so I just want to make sure I give a big shout out to him. Dr. Sanford was honored at the University of Minnesota. If you want to watch that performance, you can watch that performance at the University of Minnesota YouTube page. It is right on there. As soon as you go to the University of Minnesota band, it is right there on the page. So you are available to go ahead and watch that. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm just really tired of these battle of the bands. I don't know anybody else who is, but I'm extremely tired of all of these battle of the bands. I mean, it's just way too much. We had the national battle of the bands. There was that battle of the bands that was supposed to happen in New Orleans that didn't happen for good reason, obviously. But if that didn't go down, then guess what? It would have happened. So we had that battle of the bands. There was the Labor Day Classic battle of bands that happened this past weekend with like 432 bands that were performing that made absolutely no sense. I think it was VCU, South Carolina State, Virginia State, Talladega, Central, Winston-Salem State, and Benedict all in one place. And we hadn't even really gotten in the beginning of the season yet. All right, and then there's this new Battle of the Bands I just found out about, Battle of the Show Bands that's happening in October. I mean, good God. At what point are we just going to be like, all right, we need to ease up? Real talk. One of the reasons why I say this, outside of the fact that it's just a lot of Battle of the Bands going on, I'm going to continuously say this. The kids are students. At what point are we going to be like, all right, they got to get to class at some point? Like, they have to be students. And if you keep throwing them from battle to battle to battle, I mean, you can't expect all of them to be making 4.0s at this point. Heck, 3.0 or 2.2. Something's gonna give. I'm just gonna be real. All right, but hey, it is what it is. I mean, y'all tell me in the comment section. I just think it's way too many battles, but it is what it is. Anyway, speaking of battles, very quickly, I want to hurry up and get to some of the things that did happen this weekend. Again, a lot of band, a whole lot of band, way too much band for me to try to keep up with, but I tried to keep up with as much as I could keep up with. So first off, shout out to Ivan G for the video of Prairie View and Texas Southern. So obviously, you know that it went down this weekend. Prairie View and Texas Southern, they did have their Labor Day Classic, and I watched it from beginning to end. I'm just gonna be real. I'm gonna give you my thoughts. You may like them, you may not. I really don't care, but it is what it is. First off, big shout out to Brian Simmons and the marching, the staff over at Texas Southern. One of the things they did right off the back in the zero quarter is they started out with a march, and I was like, "Yo, that's what's up." You know, me being an older band person, I mean, I ain't that old, but I am pretty seasoned, I guess I would say. You know, and so I just remember a time when you would come in and the first joint you would play would be a march, and you would be battling marches. And that was the first thing that Texas Southern played. So big shout out to Texas Southern. I just 100% appreciated the fact that they did start out with a march. So big shout out to them. The other thing that I wanted to talk about as far as this is concerned, as far as the zero quarter is concerned, is the quality of sound. I'm sorry, I'm just going to be honest with you. This is not a biased thing here. I just thought Prairie View had a better quality of sound than Texas Southern. That does not mean I feel like Texas Southern sounded bad. I just thought that the quality of sound was just better. That just is what it is. Now, I will also say, I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know exactly what happened in the room, but just listening from the clip and the clip alone, there is just a difference when you're in that stadium, the Dynamo Stadium. I don't even know. Is it still called Dynamo Stadium? Anyway, but there's just a complete difference in sound when you're in there. I mean, the sound that I was getting from Texas Southern was completely different from the sound that I was getting from Prairie View. And so when it all boils down to it, I guess it could be because of the awning that's over PV versus the one that's not over Texas Southern. I don't know. I don't know. We got to choose a better stadium if we're going to keep doing this and judging, you know, sound. I'm going to be honest. TSU Tubas, there were some things that they were reaching for in the zero quarter that just didn't happen. I mean, you know, if you're going to hit it, you're going to hit it. If not, I would always advocate that if you're going to try to go up for something, you should probably choose the people who are going to go up, and you're going to choose the people who are going to play the octave down. I'm going to tell you something. It's going to actually make you sound thicker. Just a thought. I don't know. Anyway, keep going though. I'm gonna be honest. I couldn't get past the rest of the zero quarter because there's only so many rap tunes I can hear at one sitting. I can only hear minor chords for too long until after I just be like, all right, I'm good. You know, I'm gonna be honest. It's different when you talk about old school marching band. Like if somebody comes up and you're like, man, hey, they played rap songs back in the day. Yeah, that's true. But the truth of the matter is, Regulators, the song Regulators by Warren G is different than Snoop Dogg. It's just two different fields of music. So when you're hearing minor chord, triplet all the whole time, I'm sorry, for me, it just gets a little too much for me. But hey, it is what it is. As far as going into the halftime for them, I'm going to tell you, both halftimes for me kind of just left me meh. Neither one of them were truly exciting in my personal opinion. But I will say this, we all know that Texas Southern did repeated their drill from the National Battle of the Bands, which is to be expected. Everybody who performed at the National Battle of the Bands, I really didn't expect you to give us a different drill right out the back. So it's okay. I understood it. PV drill, from a drill perspective, I really liked what PV did from a drill perspective. I thought it was really good, and I expect that from Dr. Zachary, right? And then the other thing is, when PV came off the field, I really appreciated them playing the swang. You know, for PV, they've been playing it for a very long time. I ended up taking what I heard from the old arrangement, because when I was at PV, we didn't have the physical copies and the physical arrangement of the show or of the song. And so based on what I had heard, I rearranged it and then added my little flavors towards the end. But so, you know, nonetheless, I was really glad they played it and they came off the field with that. And then in the fifth quarter, I really feel like everything switched. I really just thought that PV had some really interesting song selections that, in my personal opinion, just didn't match up with Texas Southern song selections. That didn't mean that Prairie View sounded bad, but what that does mean is I just kind of felt like their song selection was just not in the same vein or pound for pound what Texas Southern was giving. And was it just me, or did Texas Southern seem louder in the fifth quarter than they did in the zero quarter? I don't know. that's I don't know. That's just kind of what I was hearing. I don't know. It could have been the clip that I was listening to, but I don't want to blame Ivan for that. Again, if you were there, give me your thoughts. Tell us what you feel in the comment section. I would love to hear it. But anyway, moving on. I told you it's a lot of band. I'm gonna try to get to everything, and then we got to get to today's show. But moving on, we also had Southern and Alabama State. Oh my gosh, Southern and Alabama State. Also, I want to say big shout out to Showtime Web and the Human Jukebox Media for providing the video. I want to try to give everybody their flowers, man, because it's really bad when you just go up and you start posting videos and you don't give everybody the shout out for everybody who's posting the clips. So appreciate you guys for your work and all that y'all did. Anyway, but Southern sounds like Southern. I mean, it's a big sound, good sound. And to be quite honest, I don't think I've ever really thought that Southern sounded terrible, even though in my personal opinion, the best years for Southern for me are still going to be the Hamer years and obviously the 90s years. But you know, Southern sounds like Southern. They're good, they're powerful, it's a big, strong sound. They had that the Annihilate battle, and I felt like Southern had the better version of it and the better arrangement of it. That's just my personal opinion. Halftime, I'm just going to be honest. Obviously, there was going to be the same drill that was going to come from Southern, so they didn't really change up too much from their drill. However, I really appreciate what the Dolls are doing, man. Very big shout out to the Dolls. Very, very good job on what they did. Alabama State. They came the Stingettes came out on motorcycles, which I don't know what happened after that. It was just kind of like come out on motorcycles, get off the motorcycles, and then the show started. And for me, it was just kind of like, all right, what else was supposed to be happening with that? I do know that when I was at Norfolk, Hot Ice did the same thing. They came out on the motorcycles, but I think if I'm not mistaken, they got off the motorcycles and then the captain did a heel stretch on the motorcycle and then she jumped off of it into a split. So it was just something extra into it. But I'm gonna be honest, Alabama State, the song that you guys open up on, your intro song, I don't know what the name of it is, but I would say that there probably needs to be a rearrangement or just a revoicing, and or you're working on it per year because of the fact that it just never sounds as strong as the rest of the music that you have written for that year. So my personal opinion, if you guys are going to play that, I would say just rebalance it, revoice it, and or work on it a little bit more to get a better clarity of sound. Now, outside of that though, again, the Honeybees. Nobody, I'm not going to say that their show was not good, but what I will say is the fact that the crowd went crazy when the Honeybees came on. So that continuously proves my point of the fact that they're a gimmick. That doesn't mean that they're bad, because I think they did a great job. But the truth of the matter is, we all know that they're a gimmick. They come on the field and their job is to excite the crowd. And guess what? You all know that when a big person does a split, everybody goes crazy. And guess what they did at the end? A split. Because Alabama knows that that's what's going to get the crowd. So regardless of how well they dance, which I think they dance very well, they are a gimmick within their own right. I mean, it just is what it is. Moving on to the fifth quarter with Alabama State and Southern, I'm just going to say, I thought it was a good stand battle. I thought that back to back, pound for pound, I think they all did a great job. I'm gonna tell you about Alabama State. Honestly, when Alabama State is playing as a full group, I thought it was great. I thought that the sound was there, clarity was there, balance was there. But when you start breaking them up, I think the trumpets leave something to be desired. I think that they need to continue to work on that trumpet section. As a low brass section, from a euphonium and trombone standpoint, I think that they're doing very well. But I will say that every time they broke that section down, I think This Place Hotel that they played. And once they got to the end, they started breaking those sections up. Boom, 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 boom. That part right there, it's just it just was like real choppy and something that, in my personal opinion, needed work. And again, the trumpets needed to work on those parts. And one of the things that I tend to hear is specifically from Southern, and somebody tell me if I'm wrong or right, but generally I don't think I've heard too many times where the individual sections were lacking in those kind of areas. Now, I could be wrong. Now, I'm not saying that it's never happened, but I'm just saying on average, I don't think that it's happened that much. Now, it could also be in a situation where they don't play that many separate types of parts to where they're not exposed in that manner. So that could also be the reason too. Also in the fifth quarter, man, I don't know what was the name of that song that Alabama State played in the fifth quarter. It was one song that just woke them up, woke the crowd up, woke Alabama up. Snooze, I think it's called Snooze. Somebody tell me in the comment section. I don't know, but it was big. That was probably the best song that Alabama played all night, and it woke everybody up. And then right after that, it felt like Alabama and Southern went to a love fest because they played nothing but slow songs and grooves right after that. So, man, whatever. But for me, I'm not gonna really get into the who won thing and who lost thing. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's gonna be up to your personal opinion anyway. In my personal opinion, I really thought that both of them did very well. In my personal opinion, I think that Southern consistently through the rest of the night was the one who took it. There was more consistency across there. But again, I just think that it's going to be up to your interpretation anyway, until we start actually documenting and putting it down on the numbers and the scale sheet and saying, hey, this person got it because of this number. It's all your personal opinion. So, hey, it is what it is. Anyway, but I'm going to go ahead and move on. Why? Because I still got more band to talk about. And then we got to get to the rest of the show. And people are waiting backstage like, come on, man, you're talking too daggone much. Anyway, but to move on, got to get to Bethune-Cookman at the Battle of the Bands. Again, there were a lot of people at the Battle of the Bands. I wasn't going to sit there and go through every single one of them. But Bethune, shout out to A1 Media. It's my guy, A1 Media. I haven't forgotten. There's still some things I got to do for him, so I'm going to make sure I hit him up. But anyway, but shout out to him and the video that he captured of this Battle of the Bands. It was just a lot. I don't know how you did it, brother, but you did it. But nonetheless, I want to get to Bethune. Bethune did Bethune, man. I'm going to be honest. There are a lot first of all, let me put this out there. As far as all the bands are concerned right now, I really don't hear any bands. I haven't heard yet any bands that are just like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. HBCU band right now is doing a really good job. Just from a clarity perspective, from a sound perspective, from an arrangement perspective. Now, I'm also going to say, and as I've always said before, I think a lot of arrangement techniques are being duplicated across different universities and so on and so forth. But I mean, again, I still feel like, hey, you guys are doing whatever you guys need to do to be able to, I guess, be put on the map. That's just my personal opinion. But at the same time, we need difference. And I think Bethune is different. I mean, at the end of the day, Bethune is going to be Bethune, and they sound clean. Bethune, by far, to me, so far, is the cleanest HBCU that I have heard thus far. Second would be Norfolk. Third would be, if I had to go ahead and give it, third would be Southern. So that's just where I am. As far as cleanliness, I'm not talking about anything else but cleanliness. But by far, Bethune is the cleanest band that I've sound or heard thus far. And what was it? I'm Going Down, the slow tune that they play. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's just well written, well played, well approached, everything that I can possibly think of, all done correctly. Shout out to Bethune. And one more group that I got to just completely shout out. I'm going to say shout out to Talladega. Look, here we go. I'm saying shout out to Talladega for this reason and this reason only. This is probably about the best I've heard Talladega sound on the field. Now, I don't know whatever y'all feel out there, but I watched this field show, and by far, this is the best I've heard Talladega sound on the field. Now, I didn't watch the battle portion of this Battle of the Bands because I'm telling you, one, I was just banned out, and then two, if it all boils down to it, the one thing I'm going to pay attention to the most is the halftime show. But I'm just going to say this: shout out to Dega. Best they've sounded, in my personal opinion, on the field by far in the last couple of years that I've heard them. So great job of what you guys are doing there. You guys keep it up. honorable mentions from bands that I did hear this past week. Tuskegee and Central State. Very, very good sounds, guys. Justin put it in the comments. South Carolina State, absolutely. I don't disagree with that. But definitely some three. I'll put them in that category. Three bands that I'll just say are doing a really good job, specifically with smaller numbers and growing programs. Man, you guys are doing it, man. Shout out to you guys. But again, I'm just gonna say this: a lot of Battle of the Bands going on. Good Lord, we need to take a pause on Battle of the Bands. And then the final, well, it's two things I have to say. One thing is, I'm sorry, or I'm not sorry. We need to cut dance routines. Just cut them all. Can we go 1 year, no dance routines? None. And here's the reason why. Here's my personal opinion. The reason why we need to cut dance routines is really because of the fact that we see most of these dances on TikTok anyway. It's not exciting anymore. There was a time to where when social media wasn't a big thing. So when you see 100, 120, 200 people doing the same dance at the same time, it was exciting to see. But it's not the same because everybody's doing them on TikTok. And then the moves that you're doing that are now out are like little bitty moves that don't translate well on the field. When you talk about what the moves that we used to do back in the day, they were really big moves, big leg kicks, big arm movements, so on and so forth. And it really was just a lot more exciting. Now it's like the dance routine is the lull of the whole thing. Unless you pull out a gimmick, I just say cut your losses. 1 year, no dance routines. And here is the second part that I was going to add. At what point are we going to be creative in field shows? At what point are we going to stop doing the same thing? I watched a lot of field shows. And guess what? Not too many of them were different. Not too many of them went through the same format. Drill, dancer, slow tune, dance routine, get off the field. Oh, I'm sorry. Some people switched it up. Drill, slow tune, dancers, get dance routine, get off the field. At what point are we going to do something different? So guess what? If you cut the dance routine, that gives you room to be a little bit more creative. So how about we try that? Let's be a little bit more creative on our field shows. Now, I understand that we're in the era of let's sit in the stands and crank up till we old and blue or old and gray or whatever. I don't know who turns old and blue, but I'm going to tell you right now, bro, at this point, we got to try something different because the drills, the half times are putting me to sleep. And to be quite honest, I don't even think the students from an energy perspective are putting the possible energy they can in the field show versus what they're doing in the stands. So that's just my piece on that. I don't know. Y'all tell me what y'all feel in the comment sections. Also, shout out to Jackson State for the new uniforms. The J5 got new baby blue uniforms. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a fan of it. When I saw it, I thought they were pajamas. I thought they had the pajamas on with the Busby helmets on, and I was like, yo, is this a new thing they're doing? Kind of almost remember when Alabama State had the all black leotard daddies? Yeah, that's what I thought that they were until I actually clicked on the picture. So, hey, but the rest of the band uniform is dope. I like that. But the all baby blue, I don't know. Anyway, man, we got to move on, man, because I got some people waiting backstage and we got to get to the topic today, man. So let me do this the right way. Welcome everybody to Talk That Talk, where we have the unfiltered, unscripted, uncomfortable conversation about band, HBCU band culture, music education, and more. Man, I see a lot of people in the comment section. Y'all go ahead and keep talking about everything I just went over. We can talk about it. We can talk about it during the show. We can talk about it offline. I don't care. Matter of fact, y'all run over to the Instagram and y'all can have a conversation about it there and we'll still talk about it. But while you're in here, go ahead and click that like daddy, man. Just go ahead and smash it right now, man. Let's get it started early so we don't got to wait for it. Also, please make sure you subscribe to the Passionate Network and turn on notifications. This episode will be up on all your podcasts and networks. Just type in Talk That Talk, except for on Apple Podcasts where you can type in Real Talk That Talk. All right, man. Let us get into it. Yeah, that was a lot of talking, Malik. my mouth is my mouth is dry, bro. But don't worry, I'm gonna keep rolling. See, I gotta put it up on the screen, but I'm gonna keep rolling, man. We gotta go ahead and get this conversation out, man. So on today's episode, I don't know why that popped up. Anyway, on today's episode, man, we're actually talking about funding in the band room. As a former music educator, and I don't want to say former because I still am very heavily into practice. I will be at TMEA this year. I am not playing about that. I'm just not directly in the classroom, and it is what it is. But I still try to keep my ear to the ground and knowing everything that's going on. So let me rephrase that. As a music educator, there we go. As a music educator, man, who has been in the inner city schools and who has been in the suburban schools, one of the things that I know that I have had conversations on both sides of the track about is funding. And I've heard a lot of things, from a lot of people. Funding is the reason why I can't get where I need to be. Funding is the reason why we would do so much better with funding. And so I brought some guys in who are going to have this conversation with me. One of which that I know for a fact has had some successful programs. His track record is super dope. And I can't wait to have this conversation. And another one, I'm gonna start calling him Doctor right now. Dr. Wright. He was at Norcom and doing a great job. He has been working and is still in some capacity working with the Spartan Legion. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring both of these brothers in and we're going to have this conversation. So what's going on?
What's going on, bro? Thank you for having us, man.
Man, I think we need to show without you guys, man. I think it's very important that we have this conversation. And to be quite honest, you guys are some of the best guys I know to have a conversation with.
Appreciate that, man. Let me just say, you got some water because you did. I know you could see us smiling and talking, so I'm sure you could see us like, man, you going in. So, but I will say that I agree with a lot of what you said since I've kept up with quite a bit of it. So kudos to you because I know that took a lot of your time to go through all of that.
Man, look, my wife was getting mad at me. I was watching so much stuff last week, and I was like, "Good God, this is so much band." Oh God, it's so much band. But I mean, it is what it is. It's part of the job, man, and I love doing it, man. Real talk.
Hey, Julian, you got echo. I got echo too.
So that's probably you. Then.
Yeah.
Hit the acceleration button. In the doctor's degree to know how to work a computer.
It's on.
Yeah. Smith. All right. So then let me see. Did that work? Hold up, no, that ain't work. All right, that worked. All right, so let's just do this. Just make sure that if you're not talking, just mute your mics, and then that'll work on both ways. All right, man. Let's go ahead and get into this conversation, man. I'm really just gonna. So if anybody has noticed, I've kind of changed up the show. I usually just put a topic there, and we just kind of go in on the topic. But I've realized that if I just put something out there and we open up the floor, that gives room for more dialogue. So I'm gonna put something out there, and then we'll just go ahead and talk about it, and we'll see how far it goes. And then there it is. We'll make it happen. So here's the first question: Are lack of funding, or is lack of funding an excuse for fading or failing programs? Let's go, Derek, and then Eric.
I don't want to say it's an excuse. I do think it plays a big factor in it, though, man. It's so band is an expensive thing. Let's just be frank about it. Instruments cost money, uniforms cost money, travel costs money, everything costs money. And you need that to have a successful program. You can't have a successful program on just hopes and dreams. So if you're not supported, and I would say it's two different ways to be supported. Either your administration supports you and provides a budget for you that you're able to operate efficiently with, or you have a good boosters or foundation program that's going to allow you to operate. But without that, your program's going to slowly fade away. You're not going to be able to buy new instruments. Kids are going to be playing on instruments that's older than them. They're going to lose interest in your program. Even just the quality of uniforms, they're not going to look good because you're using the same old material. Everything that we have in band does have an expiration date on it. If you don't have the funds to replace that, you're going to start seeing, just like the uniforms, they're going to start fading away. And I think that is very true. So I don't want to say it's an excuse. If you don't have funding, because you can go out and create your own funding. I've got some fundraisers that I did at Norcom that gave me more money than and I was provided a budget, but I've had fundraisers that, were almost raised double the amount that I had in that budget. So it's possible to raise the money. You just got to have a tenacity to do so. So I don't think it's an excuse. I just think it makes it a lot harder. So.
And you talked about fundraisers. We'll get to that later on down the line, definitely, because that's a big piece that I think that it was something that I ran in trouble to, but I'll really explain it later. But go ahead, Eric, what you got?
It's harder. Let's call it what it is. It's much more difficult for an activity that can be, and it's expensive. It's an expensive activity. To get a quality instrument, you got to pay more money, to get quality uniforms. And then you talk about capital outlay and the upkeep and the maintenance and etc. That all costs money. And then let's talk about fundraising. And then, the way our system works here, especially in Texas, is that you have marching techs and you have et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have an entire staff, a design staff now that local high schools are promoting their design staffs the same way drum corps are. And so it is harder. Is it impossible? No. Given the majority of my career has been in spaces that were under-resourced. And I'm not going to call them lower income because they were under-resourced, because even lower income schools, if we want to talk about Title I specifically, can be resourced. And so we have colleagues, we have friends that have budgets, but then they're just arguably not good teachers. So sometimes having more resources, having more funding does not dictate your success as a music educator. And I've seen that on both ends, where I've seen folks like Jesse Espinoza at Waltrip High School and Charlie Stevens before him make literally something out of nothing. And I proudly claim myself from that lineage, where I got to sit in those conversations like, okay, principal told us no, we gonna find a way. Let's go get this fundraiser. Let's go do X, Y, and Z. Let's put the booster together because we already got the no. Let's go figure out the yes. And so I've been in those situations where literally only one of my schools has ever given me a budget. Every other school, when I worked in Houston ISD, I was operating on a $0 budget. It was all per request. And so literally year after year, and because I was in a site-based system, it became so difficult. So is it an excuse? No, but let's be real, it is harder. It makes things more difficult. I always tell people this story. When I slept on my office room floor after a football game the day of my birthday, so a frat brother could barbecue some chicken so we could sell in the morning, and then sell the chicken in the morning, get on the bus, go to a marching contest the next Saturday. And then all my students are like, wait, it's your birthday. Why did you do that? Because I'm going to figure out a way for y'all. So that's why when people say, oh, I don't have the money. Okay, well, you just gave up and you've given up. Now, that goes into the aspect, and I hope we get to that. Should we? Should we do all those things? And that's where, I can admittedly tell you that I shouldn't have on some of those things, because I killed myself in the process. No energy I was in my mid-20s, man, and I would fall asleep at a damn movie theater hanging out with my now wife, my girlfriend, and she's looking at me like, it's 7 p.m. Why are you asleep? And it's because I would literally give my all to just find the yes for the students when I would get a no from administration.
Man, you said a mouthful. Okay, so let me I want to go back to some things here. So Derek, you said something to the degree of funding and interest. Does funding equal interest for students, or is it something else that equals the interest for students?
Definitely your product is the number one interest for your program. If you have a bad product, kids aren't going to be interested. They don't want to go into something that's going to embarrass them. But if your program looks good, and in order to look good, you need that, you need money. If you want a new windsuit, some kids will join band to get a windsuit. I've seen it happen. I mean, it's not even a far-fetched thing. It's a common thing. So if you got nice windsuits, or you got shiny instruments. I remember my beginner band students. I'm going through inventory, passing out instruments, and I have an instrument that may have been a little bit more seasoned than the other. I give it to a student. Why do I have this instrument? All the instruments shiny and mine's not. So for students, the aesthetic aspect of band is really important. And in order to have a good aesthetic product, you got to have money. So I do think it's very important. I think the interest is comes with money. Now, like I said, we didn't say if it was a budget or if you fundraise. How do you get it? You get it. But you need that money to have an interesting product. Nobody wants to be out there with a white T-shirt and some balls and shorts and some shacks on, man. So, yeah.
So you hit the nail on the head, man. I remember my last year when I was in at Madison here in Dallas, and I bought brand new windsuits for the kids, man. And shoot, I had people from the hey man, how I get one of those, man? I was like, you got to get in the band, bro. Like that's the only way it's gonna happen. Like the whole school, I had the admin team. Like, so when y'all giving me a windsuit? In my mind, I was like, when you support me, then you'll get one. But yeah, so yeah, I agree with you on that. And then Eric, you were talking about, specifically in the state of Texas. You're absolutely right. When we're talking about Texas, it's just completely different in a lot of ways when it comes to funding and the things that programs are asking for and their needs. What do you believe that more of the inner city programs would use with that funding? Because I know that, like you said, you know, there's design teams, there's guard techs, there's, so on and so forth. What do you feel, or what do you think that these directors would use with that kind of funding?
What they would use versus what I think they should use it for is probably two different things. I literally just had a conversation today with a fine arts administrator here in Texas, where he's dealing with some challenges of hiring folks that look like us, like intentionally. Like, hey, I'm trying to put representation in front of the kids that look like them to make them see that they can be that. But then they're resourced. They have the funding, but yet they're not using it to their maximum capacity. For example, like even myself in undergrad, I wasn't taught how to write drill. It wasn't until I joined the staff with Dr. Zach that he took me under his wing and allowed me to learn from him, and it's those things that I wonder, could we start using the same tactics, the same strategies that our drum corps and corps style colleagues do, and put them to people that we could trust? For example, could we hire a Julian to write my UIL marching show? Could I hire a Brandon Hopkins to write my marching show, the music? Could I hire a Dr. Zach to write my drill to be a competitive? You get so we have to start utilizing even our own community in that aspect and bringing them into the fold in that, because others do it already. So that's where I hope, if they were resourced, we would tap into our own people, our own community, and empower them, because they're already doing it at a high level. And essentially, a lot of our high schools are just trying to emulate the collegiate level. And so I want them to hopefully create their own identity by still honoring what they're trying to do, whether that be an 8 to 5, whether that be picture drill and adjusted step size, whatever the thing is, make it your own. And I think the thing, unfortunately, because I've experienced it early in my career, I was striving, I got to be like that. Maybe I do need props on the field to get any type of recognition here in Texas. And then I go see a band like Stephen F. Austin of Fort Bend ISD in 2016. Bob Cresty was director of bands there. He had, I think he had over 100 on the field, 6A, and made top 15 in the state. No props, no color guard equipment. And I'm looking at that, I'm like, okay, so if you just go out there and march well and play well, you're going to get the respect. And I think that's what we have to tap into. Let's stop thinking I need a big old prop in the middle of the field and that's going to get me the recognition. I need to go get a design team and promote it on social media. No, just teach. And so if you need help in that aspect, then spend the money on master classes. Spend the money, if you can't go individually, on private lessons, because there's all solutions to this. Like, for example, down in the Valley, South Texas, they have their own private lesson teachers. And what I mean by their own, their staff, 6 through 12, are the private lesson teachers. So they have more instrumental music teachers, but the 6th grade French horn student gets taught by the head band director from 6th grade to senior year. So it's being creative with our funds and putting them in the right places. And that's the part that I say that's why I started it with. How they would spend it, because maybe we would spend it on maybe the flashy stuff, the stuff that's going to be a little bit more visible. That's not sustainable. And I would want them to think about ways that bringing in our culture, our identity, what things we do well into what we do at the high school and secondary level.
Man, you said something that just really just kind of jumped out, man. Because a lot of the times we talk about funding, but we talk about it from the student advancement, right? But the fact that you brought it up, like, hey, you can take this and you can better yourself, like be a better educator. And I think that you're really kind of nailing some things in the head, like just even talking about your journey is very similar to a lot of us, right? When we're in there, we graduate, we come out of undergrad, we young, we hungry, we making all the sacrifices in the world to try to make sure that our program is, and in retrospect, we get older and we sometimes, not all of us, but sometimes we all think that we got the answer because we've been through X, Y, and Z, but there's a lot more that we can go and get. Again, going back to funding, if we had the funding and the know-how to be able to say, all right, let me go and get whatever I need to be better. Yeah, I like that.
So I actually did that at my last assignment when I was at Eisenhower High School at Aldine ISD. I brought in my grad school professor to come work with our staff. So it was the middle school staff and the high school staff. We sat down and we pulled out some repertoire, and I said, walk us through it. How would you teach it? How would you formulate, like literally just almost a grad school course for us selfishly to make us better. And I was able to use it as a consultant fee because it's all allowable. It's not illegal. I put them down, did the whole procurement practices, but I listed it as a consultant fee, and it worked, and we were better for it because, like you said, you're going to TMEA, but how many of our colleagues can't? How many of our colleagues can't even afford to go or don't get permission to go? So bring that education to you. And I think us as music educators, we're always trying to find a way to be better. Now, do we implement it? That can be another topic of discussion. But it has to be selfishly for yourself, because at the end of the day, if you're better, your kids are better. And so if you're really trying to learn more, that's a really good way to start putting ourselves in better positions to be better educators.
Facts. All right, man. This is starting out real good, man. So let's go. Let me do this real quick. Welcome everybody to Talk That Talk. We have the unfiltered, unscripted, uncomfortable conversation about band, HBCU band culture, music education, and more. Go ahead and hit and smash and click and do whatever you need to do for that like that. Let's just go ahead and get these likes up. Also, please make sure you subscribe to the Passionate Network and turn on notifications. This episode will be up on all your podcasting networks. Just type in Talk That Talk, except for on Apple Podcasts, where you can type in Real Talk That Talk. And also, big shout out to my wife who came and got me this glass of water when my mouth was dry. So appreciate you. I thank you. Real quick, man. I know we didn't do this off the back. What's going on, Brother Moore? Brother Moore is in the building. But I want to go back real quick, and I want to give you guys a chance to just kind of talk about yourselves and your career before we move forward. I want to go ahead and start with, since Eric, we heard you last, I want to go ahead and start with you.
So my name is Eric Jimenez. I'm half of the Score podcast. Got that going on for me. I got it going since 2019. It's specifically an urban music education podcast with the intent of, one, reclaiming the term urban and changing the narrative to one that's positive about us who come from those settings and who teach in those settings. And then so I am a 13-year music educator. 10 of those years was in Houston ISD. 3 of those years is at Prairie View A&M University. And then most recently, I'm now the educational support manager for Conselmer Incorporated, from Kansas all the way down and as of yesterday, they've added Mexico to my territory as well, and I'll be the educational support manager for that country. Just a little bit about myself.
Hey, heck yeah, bro. Hey, god dang. All right, cool. All right, Derek, go ahead, bro.
Just a little bit about myself. I'm also I don't want to say former music educator. I'm taking a hiatus right now, I guess. I'm Derek, Norfolk State grad, currently in the graduate program at George Mason University.
Yes. And if you don't know the story of IC Norcom, there's a lot of history in that program. But one of the things as Legion members that we hold dear to us is that Chief, the founder of the Spartan Legion, started at Norcom and came to Norfolk and built the Spartan Legion. And so, Norcom, as for the Legion, holds a very big place in our hearts. And then for the city of Portsmouth, we ain't even gonna talk about that. And you ain't from around the area if you don't say Portsmouth right. So if you say Portsmouth, then we know you ain't from the area. I mean, I ain't from the area, but I mean, hey, I was there long enough. All right, man, let's go ahead and move on. So next question: why does it seem as though inner city programs don't have access to funding? A lot of people always talk about, man, they ain't gonna let me do this, so that's it. I can't do nothing, and it just always seems like inner city programs are just kind of cut off to some funding. So why does it seem that way? Eric, you got it.
It seems that way, unfortunately, because it is that way in some cases. We're not going to invalidate our colleagues that are getting consistent no's. But when you get a no, in my mind, I'm thinking, how can I change that to a yes? A lot of that comes with education. A lot of that comes with exposure. Whether it be, for example, I'll give you one of my cases. One of my principals was extremely competitive, and I just, you got to find out what makes your people tick. And so to find out that she's competitive, all I did was show her. I was like, hey, by the way, are you aware that we're part of Region 23 in the UIL system here in Texas? And she's like, yeah, I was aware of that, Eric. I was like, cool. And I went to Yellowboard. It's a forum here in Texas that's used anonymously for band directors and has been for a long time. And Seven Lakes, which is in the region, was hiring 10 marching techs that fall. 10. And so I printed that out and I slid that over to her desk. And then she goes, okay, what are you asking me? I said, I am going to perform right before this band at UIL Region Marching Contest. And she's like, okay. I was like, they're hiring 10. She's like, so what are you asking me for? I was like, 2. Just want 2. And she's like, okay, get that done. Go to the business manager. Let's get the paperwork in order. What she didn't realize, that was 2 more than any of my colleagues in Houston ISD, because none of that position existed. And so I structured that position to be a high brass instructor and a low brass instructor. So I created my internal private lessons by hiring an hourly lecturer to come in consistently where I monitored them. So at times it's kind of like you have to be creative, you have to be unorthodox, you have to convince your people otherwise. And at the end, when I would always talk to our staff and say, we have to prove that their investment was worth it. So we have to increase numbers. We have to be more visible. We have to bring positive light to the community. So at the end of the day, they'll look at that and say, well, why did I give them money if they're smaller? Why did I give them money if they look like that? Why did I give them money? So what you don't want to do is hand them a reason to say, I'm not going to give you money anymore. And then you backdoor it by saying, hey, I really appreciate X, Y, and Z, because I've been in situations where I've been told, stop that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, if you keep doing that, you're not going to be able to ask for more. And so they're going to look at you and say, well, you already did it. Do it again next year. If you got your sweepstakes, do it again next year with the lack of funding. And then that's the education part. Okay, yes, I did it, but that's not sustainable. So if you want to keep me, you're gonna have to invest. And those are the kind of learning experiences that I've had throughout my career. It's kind of like, yeah, find out what the person ticks, but at the same time, the meeting even I had earlier today with some fine arts administrators, they were like, we're having to educate our administration that it's not a one-stop shop to just drop money and say, I want a mariachi. You have to invest. There's capital outlay. You have to get new uniforms just the same way that you do with the marching band, with an orchestra, with the choir. But they want immediate success too. They want immediate reactions. Why don't you have the band on the field the first week? Well, I only had 14 members in the band. Now I have 75. So let me make some things shake. So it's multifaceted. But yes, because I've been in those situations. I have colleagues like, my principal keeps telling me no, and I was like, okay, well, we'll have you tied for advocacy. Nothing. All right, well, let's start there. And then if it keeps getting a no, then it might not be the best place for you. Then let's consider something else. And when I say best place for you, I think a lot of people assume go to suburbia. That's not what I'm saying. It's maybe go to another inner city school that is funded, that is supported, that does have a budget. Because I was shocked to go to Aldine and find out that I have several $1,000s in the budget. And I was like, is that my discretion to spend? Like, yeah. I'm like, that literally never happened to me. So, in doing that and in fundraising, then you can find ways to be creative. But it's just, there's so much to that I want folks to understand that it's like, yes, I hear you, I see you, but it takes advocacy. And that's the thing I love about my job. When people hit me up, I'm like, I directly can't sell you the consumer instruments. I can connect you with people that can. I know about the product and all those things, but my point is to help you support. So sometimes let's get you a price point so you have a number to go to your administration and say, this is what it's going to take to take us to the next level. But before you have that number, then you're going to say, I just want money, and that's all they're hearing. Then if you're getting realistic of like, no, I need 50,000. What? No, yeah. Look, by the way, this is only going to get us this. Oh, wow. The same way that my principal, man, I remember the first time that he's like, why don't you get a new one of these? And he pointed at one of my concert tours that I was all dented up at the middle school. And I was like, 8. And he's like, 100? And I was like, mm-mm. And he's like, oh, ask the PTO. And so it's sometimes, again, it's even that informal education that he looked at, he's like, this looks like crap. And I'm like, yeah, because it is. And our kids are playing on it. That's from 1940. Like we should probably upgrade. And so it's so much to that, but I get it. When you say that, because I get it, I frustrated too. And I'm like, man, go get your money, go fundraise, go do X, Y, and Z. You do something about it. But then I also know that I've been in those situations like you keep getting no's, keep getting no's, keep getting no's. Now I'm a mover and a shaker. If I keep getting a no, I'm gonna go find a yes. But I also understand that there's people that say, well, so be it. I got to know. I'm going to just clock in and clock out. And unfortunately, we have some of that exists in our colleagues as well.
All right, Derek, what's your thought? I don't know how you're gonna follow that, but good luck, brother.
I run the exact question by me again. I'm following, but
Why does it seem as though inner city programs don't have access to funding?
Okay, and like I said, I do agree that because it's true. Even at my school, we did have a budget, and honestly that's thankful to my predecessor who had the one fight for that with the school board to have some money allotted for the program. And mind you, that money that they allotted for that program before I got there was over a decade before that, and it never changed. But that's another thing. But I can talk about my personal experience at Hampton Roads. Okay, so we know Portsmouth, we call it the 7 cities. Portsmouth is probably the smallest out of the 7 cities, right? And so everybody kind of associates everything in Portsmouth with the urban. That's what it is. Now, Chesapeake is 5 minutes away from Portsmouth, and sometimes it wraps around Portsmouth. Now, you completely think about it the complete opposite. In fact, there's several schools in Chesapeake that have 3 band directors employed at the school full time, and then employ symphony members to give their students private lessons. If I asked my administration in Portsmouth for that, they would look at me crazy, and rightfully so, because there's so many other things that these inner city schools have to pay for. And I'm gonna tell you what the big factor is parental support and community support. Now, I'll take that back. Community, I think you flip a coin with that. But parental support, you have parents in these suburban neighborhoods that, we have band dues for $800. They'll pay it. If I ask for $150, it's going to shut down. Number one, they're going to say you're not allowed to because it's a Title I school. Students can't pay for anything, right? So now you're kind of limiting what even if you give me money, you're limiting my capability with it, because now out of my allotted budget, I got to pay for uniforms, maintenance, travel. It's my budget just suddenly got smaller, as opposed to if I could charge band dues so they can have their windsuits and stuff like that. But these are like, Title I comes with, because we get special funding for Title I, But at the same time, with that special funding, we don't have the other funding, the family funding that comes with it. So there's a double sided coin because I feel where administration are coming from. They can't give the bands so much money because they got so many things to pay for in the inner city schools just to keep them afloat. Like I love Norcom. Norcom was very, very, very supportive. And even if I didn't have, budget for it, I could go ask for something. And if I could defend my case, they would find the money for it. But it's a lot of schools that don't have that situation. I know my colleagues in Norfolk don't have that situation. They either don't have a budget or have a very small budget to work with. And it's evident in the programs too. That's the only thing I don't like. We kind of scrutinize these smaller programs, but like the first question we had, what's going to attract kids to your program? Y'all look good, you sound good, all the stuff, you're playing on nice instruments. They don't have that. They might get a grant every 10 years or something for a load of instruments, or maybe every 6 years get some new uniforms, but it's not sustainable. It's not enough. Or just like what Eric said, just resources to education. Like you're talking about a school hiring 10 techs. When I was at Norca, my whole staff worked for free. I mean, it was just strictly on the love of the school. I mean, that was what it was. I couldn't pay them a dime. I didn't have it and couldn't. Although I asked for it. You try to fight your certain battles with the school board, but we're working on volunteer basis. A lot of those inner city schools are, hey, I'm gonna get who I can get. I can't hire the principal tubist from the Capitol Wind Symphony to come instruct my tuba player. I can't do that. I'm going to ask maybe an alumni that I know that could play pretty well, to come help me out. So it's just we're lacking funding, but the funds that we do receive from the state aren't enough to keep us afloat with these suburban programs. It's just not. It's not even an even measure. Suburban programs to say, oh, we don't get any money from the state. What's your problem? But your boosters are able to raise $500,000 because that's the income that you're working with in your community. We're not working with that. We're working with Section 8 and all the other things like that, man. So I think it's your environment, man. I think there's so many other things to spend money on in these schools that band is kind of like put on the back burner for them.
So you both said something that stood out to me. Derek, you kind of said it in a few words, defending my case. But Eric, and I know I've had this, I don't even know if you remember this, but I know that I've had this conversation with you in the past, and you kind of brought it up today. Communication and documentation. One of the things, and I'm gonna further down the line have another show about this, and because I think that that's one of the things that we don't have the conversation about enough is undergrad education to band directors about advocating for your band programs, because we don't understand. Okay, well, let me backtrack. When we come out of school, we have this mentality of like, I'm gonna get me the biggest band and it's gonna be great and I'm gonna have everything I need. Now, mind you, I'm a kid who graduated from Willow Ridge High School, and I'm talking about back in the day, Willow Ridge High School, and we 280 people deep, and you had Ronald Thornton as a band director, and we had everything that we needed to be great. So going into undergrad, first of all, I'm thinking every band is like that, because back during my time of marching band, even though Willow Ridge was one of the bigger bands in the city, you really didn't have small bands. For the most part in the city, bands were at minimum between 90 and 100, and then, so on and so forth. So I'm thinking in my mind that every band is like that. So going into undergrad, all I'm thinking is, all right, when I get out of here, I'm gonna get this program, right? And I'm pretty sure that most kids now are still thinking the same things in undergrad. The thing about it is we're not educating our kids on advocacy for our programs, because 9 times out of 10, you're gonna walk into a program that you yourself have to advocate for because you don't have the funding to be able to put them or take them to the next level. And one of the things that you talked about, Eric, that I am 100% on that I learned from you is communication and documentation. Principals want to see documentation. And that is the thing. They are numbers people at the end of the day. You can go to them and say, well, I want, I like, I need this, but if you don't have data, data is the thing that's going to help put you over. And the other thing is, you can't be a hermit, meaning you can't be in your band room and only focus in your band room. And that's as far as you go. You have to talk to your principals. You have to talk to the people who are going to fight or going to help you and advocate for you, the people who run the school. And that was one of the things that I remember I had a conversation with you about that I took back. And to be quite honest, and I can tell you my story. I'm gonna tell it later, but it works. It worked per the principal. My assistant principal, I got what I needed. I would do X, Y, and Z. Now my head principal, that's a whole nother story. It's a whole nother story. But the point is that we've got to be, as directors, as educators, as kids coming out, we've got to be able to talk to these kids about communicating and advocacy and data for your programs. We run away from data. Let's be real. We run away from it. And more or less because we have this thought process, and there's a lot of things that we can actually get into that aren't specific to this conversation that we won't today. But there are a lot of things that happen in undergrad music programs that aren't conducive to what teaching is now. Teaching in specifically in band and in the music department and the fine arts department that necessarily isn't really in line with what happens today, because the truth of the matter is most of our job is data, documentation, and everything else before we get to the actual meat of teaching music. And so I think a lot of that, when kids graduate, those conversations aren't being had, and they're not prepared to have those conversations with administrators and with teachers and so on and so forth. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head, man. And then you also said something that we've said on the show a lot. If you become successful with little, they're gonna look at you and be like, all right, well, you can do it with that, so I don't need to give you nothing. You just pull that off, you good. Now my question to you is, and this can either go to you or Eric, or excuse me, you or Derek. My question to you is, how do you combat that? Now I know the answer to that, but just to be able to share, your response. How do you combat that when you have been successful with little, you go and ask for something, and then all of a sudden they say, well, hey, look, I ain't got nothing for you. And to be quite honest, y'all just pulled this off with 10 people and a pack of chewing gum. So I don't really see myself having to give you a piece of chicken if you already got the chewing gum. So how do you combat that?
That's tough because you just showed your cards. It's like you already proved you can do it. So now they're going to expect you to do it. Even today, I was so proud of talking to those fine arts directors because they're the ones that stopped a lecturer from doing more. And they said, stop, because we're advocating for you to get paid more. And the minute you do more, they're not going to want to pay you more. And I cocked my head back. I was like, I have never heard administrators, they would have said, oh, he's going to give us more for less. Let's take it. Because it's a numbers thing, right? And if I'm getting more value off of less, I'm going to take it. So you got to be careful. And so once you show your cards and you're willing to do that, they're going to expect you to do that. Now, if you pull back the next year, now you look like you're being defiant. And that's the sticky, the trippy slope, because they're like, no, you did this last year. How come you're not doing it? How come you're not staying after school? How come you're not taking the kids to X, Y, and Z? And I finally got to that point with me with one of my principals, because as much as I acknowledge that great principal that I just talked about, I got one right after that. And I remember telling her, I was like, you do know a lot of my success is owed to you. She was like, no, you're a great director. I was like, oh, I appreciate that, but the support you're giving me can change tomorrow. And she's like, oh, it's my responsibility to tell the new principal all the great things you did. that you can talk to your blue in the mouth. It's until you deal with that next person. I can still remember that conversation. Why are you going to all these marching contests? You're gonna have to cancel some. Don't go to the Prairie View one. I was like, well, I'm not going to the Prairie View one. I'm one of the hosts. I'm coordinating the festival. What? I was like, yes. So you're gonna tell me my band can't go to the festival that I'm helping coordinate? Okay, just making sure that you're clear on that, so I can make sure I can articulate that to the parents. Well, no, that's not what I said. I was like, then let me know what I can say, so I can go tell the parents what you're denying me to do. So I hate getting to that point, but then that's the assertiveness side of me, because I failed to mention this part. I spent a year as an assistant principal, so I have some of that admin language and backing. Like, okay, just making sure. I want to document this to make sure that I say the correct things at the next band parent meeting. And I remember getting a redirect email like, I never told you I canceled it. I was like, no, you didn't, but you have yet to approve them. Here's the email. Well, these are approved. You get it? And so that's the documentation part, is that you have to CYA, but also do it in a way that's like, everything that I sent was very professional, was very, coded in that language. But when it came down to, like, I went and knocked on her door, I need to speak to you. Then it becomes an assertive conversation. I need a yes or no, because I have my band parent meeting in 2 hours. I need to know what the parents, I need to tell them. I usually give them a calendar before the school year even starts. So if the minute you show your cards, they're going to expect you to do it. And then me as an administrator, I'm going to sit back and say, well, last year you were a highly effective teacher. This year you're rated a 3. You're rated a 2. We got to put you on a growth plan. And that doesn't necessarily align to your effectiveness as an educator.
Yeah, and see that Eric, is one of the things that shines in your court, is you have that admin experience. And that's why, when I did have that issue, I came to you first, because I was like, I need to figure out how to talk to this admin, because I don't know this lingo. You know what I'm saying? But I think that's one of the beautiful things about not only just being a educator, but just being human, and just admitting that you don't know, right? I think so many times, and this kind of is away from the funding conversation, but I think so many times as musicians, we argue and we fight so much as musicians for the perfection, right? Everything as a musician, we're talking about, it has to be right, it has to be perfected, this chord has to be right, otherwise it's not going to work with this chord, right? Or if you change the chord this way, and then if it doesn't go into this chord the right way, then it's wrong, right? Or it has to, like, we're always talking about the perfection, so we're always thinking from a perspective perfective mentality. The problem is that doesn't work in life, because we don't know everything. But we get into these positions and we think we know everything, and we refuse to go out and get that information and ask for help from the people that we know have the answer. And we don't want to.
The ego gets in the way, my guy.
Yeah.
That's what that is. The same way that, no, don't come listen to my band yet. Come and clinic them one day before contest. Well, by that point, you don't need me to clinic. So we're also afraid to show our weaknesses as an educator, where I'll be the first one to be like, man, come listen to my band, come on, sit down, tell me everything, let's debrief in my office, what can I do better, what can they do better? But until we remove that ego in these situations, man, we have full of resources. Hey, I'm going through X, Y, and Z, how do I go through it? But our entire profession, not just band, needs to remove that ego, and we're all going to be better for it.
I agree. All right. I actually, and if anybody has realized, I have tried to do my best to keep these shows shorter. Because Derek knows that earlier we would go like 2 hours. But no, because I've learned to be respectful of people's time. And my time too, because I be wanting to sleep. We be up to like 11 o'clock. So with that being said, let's get ready to go to this last topic. So welcome everybody to Talk That Talk. We have the unfiltered, unscripted, uncomfortable conversation about band, HBCU band culture, music education, and more. Man, y'all go ahead and smash that like daddy. I don't even care if you're watching on playback. Even if you're watching on playback, just go ahead and smash that like that. It helps with the YouTube algorithm anyway. All right. Also, please make sure you subscribe to the Passionates Network and turn on notifications. This episode will be up on all your podcast networks. Just type in Talk That Talk, except for on Apple Podcasts, where you can type in Real Talk That Talk. All right. Last thing that I got here, boosters and fundraisers. So the first, I'm going to ask them in two different ways. Do we need boosters? Do we need boosters? Derek.
I'm gonna say yes. I think it's a firm yes. I'm gonna say yes. Especially if we're talking about an urban school. These are, what your parents and community members that have connections that you don't have, that may be able to secure some funding because of a relationship that you don't have. So it's always better to have some delegates for your program that can advocate for your program as well. I think boosters do an amazing job. I know some schools that only operate from their boosters fund, and it's a big fund. It's not even like this is some site. I know high school bands that have over $1 million in boosters funds. So it yes, you need boosters. It's the same way you think about at the university level. We may not call them a booster; we call them foundation or anybody that advocates for university. You're getting sponsorships, and this is not the band director doing this. These are people out here advertising for university and advocating and saying this is why you should do this. We have this product, and we can promote your company, promote your image, whatever it is, for exchange for don't. These are people that are working for you, essentially just for your success, for the program's success. So I think a booster is entirely necessary. I don't think you can have a sustainable program without some form of it. I don't think it might not have to be called a booster, but some form of advocacy for your program that's raising funds. I think you need that.
Agreed. I'm assuming you asked this question because of the problems that may come with having a booster. So, but to go along with what Derek just said, boosters allow you to cut through the red tape too. You don't have to follow the procurement practices of picking somebody off the approved vendor list when I need t-shirts in 4 hours. Like, I need a parent to go cut the check and do X, Y, and Z. The same way that I was able to fundraise and bring in clinicians through the boosters. They were able to document, get a W-9 from our clinicians. They do it on their taxes. And so I've been in situations where I walked into places that didn't have one. And so we created a fundraising committee where I essentially was the facilitator of that, because even in that, in serving under resourced areas and lower income areas, I had parents that didn't know how to be a booster. They didn't know what essentially they could do. So we would come together and say, well, what do you do well? What do you do well? And, oh, I got this idea. And I remember one time a parent said, I sell Sensi, and I'll be willing to sell all the profits for 2 weeks. Like, I'll let the kids sell, and anything they sell, the profits will go to the booster. And I remember a parent was like, no. What are we going to get? $50 from that? And I'm like, okay, let me stop you there. This is a parent that just willingly gave her profit, and that's $50 more than we had yesterday. So, and then if I get that parent to know that they're committed into this process, and I honor them and I thank them for it publicly as well, then hopefully now we got a band parent for life. And this was at the middle school level. And luckily, it did happen. That band parent stayed all the way through high school, went to Wall Trip. I would see her every single game. She was part of the booster organization there. But then I've also been in spaces where a booster club was set up and nobody wanted to run for a president because they hated it. They hated the culture. They hated having to go to meetings. And I remember sitting there my first year at Heights High School, and I'm like, is nobody going to run for president? And then the parents looking at me like, I ain't doing it. Ask somebody else. And so I remember having to pull one of my trusted parents into the office, and I said, just do it. I'll run it. But on paper, I need a president. I need to be able to do that. I'll host the meetings. I'll facilitate. By next year, we could transfer it over. And I'll never forget that by next year, it's like, Mr. Jimenez, don't worry about it. We got it. Because as much as I was creating the culture in the band program and revitalizing this identity, I was doing the same thing with the parent booster organization. It was about creating, like, I want them to want to be there. They're already volunteering their time. Might as well make it that they don't come in and say, why am I doing this? What's the point of this? And I wanted them to feel like family. Until this day, man, Heights High School, shout out to all my former band parents. I see them all through social media still hanging out, and their kids graduate in 2019. And it's because we created that community and knowing that they have a place. Now, it goes a step further. At every opportunity, I had the students thank the parents publicly, out loud, like, thank you so much. So I was real big on, and I call it what it is. It was almost like this, what's that called? positive toxicity, like too positive, that you know what I mean. And so I did exactly that. The kids were all in it, and it was like, come on. And so I it's so much to that because I know the horror stories of them changing the bylaws and saying, nope, we make all the decision on how the money is spent. Bye. You can come ask us for permission. Now, when you got that, then you disband that thing and go with no funding. You know what I mean? Because that's problems after problems after problems. And that's why I'm assuming you asked that question, because I've also heard the negative aspect of having those boosters.
Yeah. So first off, I've heard the horror stories. I've never specifically been a part of it. But no, that's not why I asked the question. Honestly, the reason why I asked the question was because I am a product, or I'm not gonna say I'm a product, but I've been a part of situations where I've had no booster and I've had booster. And just the story from it was I was working in an inner city school, and a matter of fact, I was working in about two inner city schools prior to, and we just could not get, boosters. We couldn't get band parents. It was like, and if we asked for anything, it was like, well, we can't do that. That's too much. That's impossible. Blah blah blah. So I ended up working in a school in Katy. And so I when I went in, my brain was so fixated on what happened previously that when I went to the parents and I had my parent meeting, I was like, well, we need X, Y, and Z, and this needs to happen. If you guys could just, if you could give a little something. So I went in very passive because I was used to what I had been through in the past. And so I had one of the parents come to me after the meeting and said, "Hey, Mr. Luke, let me go ahead and tell you this. Whatever you need, just ask. We have the money.
Mm.
The parents have the money. So whatever you need, just ask. You don't have to be passive about it." And I said, okay. From then on, we built a team. We built a booster. We had fundraisers. They were like, all right, I can go do this. All right, Mr. Luke, don't you worry about it. We got it. All right, boom. We got this fundraiser set up. We got this fundraiser set up. All you got to do is just tell the kids, and then you be there, and then everything will take care of itself. And, so just going through that process, realizing that, yes, boosters are definitely people, in my personal opinion, that you need in your corner. I think it definitely helps with funding. I think that it helps for morale. I think it helps for spirit. For me, my mother was she had her band booster shirt. I'm gonna be honest, I only remember seeing her like twice. But the two times that I saw her as a student, that just makes you feel good, right? To see that your parent is actively involved in what you care about. And so, I think that having booster brings a lot to the table. So now switching gears to the fundraiser aspect. Now, here's my fundraiser story. And then I'll ask the question after that. So in one of my previous gigs, my head principal told me that the typical fundraisers that you do, right? Most of the typical fundraisers are like food, like world's finest chocolate. Like my daughter, she's doing the cook. Hey, don't turn your eyes up at the world's finest chocolate. That chocolate is amazing. You hear me? Let's not do that. I will boot you out now. All right. But yeah, world's finest chocolate. My daughter's doing like the cookie dough thing. Right now, popcorn is hot, right? And so my principal said, we don't sell no food for fundraisers here on this campus. And I said, what? Wait a minute. Like I come from band. So like that, I came up in Willow Ridge. We did spaghetti dinners. Like when I was in Beaumont and Ozan, we gave out barbecue plates. Like that was a thing. Like when you cut that off, that's like a lot of fundraisers. So I was like, okay, well, cool, that's fine. What do you expect? What suggestions do you have if food is not an option? Well, the football team is doing like, spirit wear and stuff like that. And so you could do that. So I was like, in my mind, I'm like, well, the football team has like made it through to district champs like a couple of times. So like people care. Like I'm building a program from absolutely nothing, and like the kids on the campus don't even like the band right now. And this is like my first year is going into my second year in. Who do you expect to buy this stuff? Like the kids barely, the kids in the band, I could tell them to buy it, but then they're like, it's their money. So like, what do you want me to do? Right. Um, so I say all that to say, what are some good fundraising ideas that you all have encountered or that you know of that would be beneficial to programs that aren't food?
Man, that's
Uh,
tough because the first ones that came to mind were food, man. You know what I mean? It's like you get the chicken donated, you got somebody on the grill. You know what I mean? Like let's go, and a parent goes and buys the plates and call it a day. But I'm gonna let Derek jump in on that one because I got to simmer on that one a little bit.
yeah, so I'm gonna say some of my probably biggest fundraisers were actually hosting events. We hosted a band competition. Now, of course, there's an overhead that comes with some of the stuff, but I mean, usually especially if you really rally and support, and with band competitions, you have to think about the aspect that it's not just your band that the stands are going to fill up. I mean, it's not the fans of your band stands are going to fill up with. Who are you inviting or get into these programs? And with that comes how good is your relationship with these band directors that you're trying to get to come to your event. So if you have a good relationship with these popular bands around here that have good community support, you can raise quite a bit of money. Last time I did that, I raised. I'm not gonna give the exact amount, but it was five figures. So, um, for a high school band, that's a lot. And even events on campus. I mean, there were some things that I still had in the idea stage, like what's something I know I was thinking about the band hosting talent shows and maybe like a modeling show, things that the kids like to do or that the community to come out for. So I think events is a big thing if you want to get away from like food and materialistic things. You already said the spirit wear. Uh, that's a tough thing unless you have somebody that's donating the spirit wear because what you gonna do is you're gonna spend $10 a shirt and then sell it for 15. If the shirt's not hot, they're not gonna buy it for $15. Um, so I'm gonna say my number one thing would be hosting events. Oh, number two, you got to go out in that community. I'll say that in Portsmouth, we small, but any church that I ever went to, any community event, I played for the police department. I mean, they're always. I mean, first of all, you're getting a new audience for support. Um, the undercover snack shack in the band. Hey, but that's the undiscovered funds. You can't use, but I was playing out in the community, man. Donations go a long way, especially with these churches. If you have a good relationship with the clergy over there, and your students represent themselves well, the congregation loves to support our young people. They really do, especially when they're doing something positive. So if you can show them doing something positive, show your results, they're going to donate. So community and events. I think that's my two. At Norcom, those are my two biggest things right here was the community and the events I hosted.
So while I was sitting here, man, I agree with those because it started making me think of because I remember I did a just like a cupcake fundraiser at the very top of the it was called Short and Sweet because all it was a short concert of what the marching band had already worked on before our first game, and then I had a little dessert table, but it turned into a band parent meeting as well. So why it was like all in one. If you say you can't get parents, but more are gonna come to see their kid perform than to sit in an empty band hall and listen to a person talk. So I started thinking about the things even what I'm doing now as a PTO parent now of a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. That my wife and I are considering incentives for parents. For example, that car rider line is for the birds. Like I don't want to ever sit and I'm just starting, you know? And so we're sitting there, my wife like, man, it takes 20 minutes to drop off my son. Like, why? There should be a better way. So we literally called the principal and I was like, hey, would you be willing, because I saw this in the chat, would you be willing that we can raffle off 4, maybe 5, skip the line passes for the year? And then she's like, "Oh yeah, it's a great idea. I was like, as long as you give us permission, so it can be not only an incentive for your program, but it could be an incentive for your campus, your school, a parking space, something that's designated. And those go for top dollar because I'm also an MC and an announcer because of my DJing days. So I'm at these top dollar like PTO fundraisers where they're raising $50,000, where their silent auction tables are all items donated by the community. So going in line with partners, your community members. What do you have to offer? Band parents. Well, I own a landscaping company. We'll offer 5 freelance, cuts. Like, what's the value of that? $80, $100. Cool. Let's put it in there. So it's about thinking creatively because I also did culturally relevant events. We did Loteria, which is the Mexican bingo. And so I started tapping into what do we do well as a community? And what would bring more parents to make them feel more comfortable, more at home. So the parents that didn't know about Loteria, we just let them know right at the top, like, hey, it's kind of like Mexican bingo, and we made an event out of that. Now, again, you make more money by selling food, but all these things that you just tag on, whether it's a meal, what's a thing, but you got to think creatively of those things because the events are perfect. You solicit all these. I mean, think about it. How many times do we go get our bands to perform, but we literally never ask for an honorarium? We just we're gonna go perform. That's something I learned very well from Dr. Zach. Is that like, oh cool, you want the marching storm to perform? Okay, are you feeding the kids? I assume that y'all would. Okay, well we're not. So as long as you can help us with transportation and feeding the kids, that's the bare minimum. We usually ask for some type of honorarium, and it was just like hearing them navigate this conversation at the collegiate level lets me know that even these conversations, because we're mostly focusing on secondary, they still happen at our colleges, my people. And so if you're thinking they're not, man, our head band directors and whoever's in charge of advocating for that money is almost getting the same type of, well, why don't you just take 30 people out of the band to that classic game? And it's like, what? So it you have to think creatively because we're going to make some good money off of that parking thing. Like it really is. Like parents already getting in wrecks and stuff because they don't want to wait in this line. So it's like my wife asked me, "How much would you pay?" I was like, "A couple hundred." Like if I can get to the front of the line, I'm good. And so it's about thinking creatively, but I also want people to think what fits geographically and culturally the community that I'm serving and the kids that I'm serving.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. First of all, I didn't even know you used to spin. We're gonna have a conversation about that. Because I'm about to bring my tables out, man, because I didn't got asked to do a gig.
Let's go.
Yeah, man, absolutely. But no, I learned that being at PV those 5 years that I was there. When I got to Dallas, if anybody asked us to be anywhere, you feeding? Yeah, I would not take them kids nowhere if you weren't feeding them, if you weren't providing transportation, and honestly, a lot of them were like, really? Like we gotta, yes, absolutely. That is, it's not negotiable, right? But a lot of people were surprised that I was asked, well, you can't just get a district, but no. You can take, because there's a lot of other things that we have to go through to get district buses. You can go ahead and provide that if you want us there. Period. But no, I think everything that you guys have said are very good ideas. But I think one of the ways that you ended it, Eric, is it's specific to your area. When Derek talks about having an event, right, hosting a battle, I couldn't do that, that at that particular school because we didn't have a field that would facilitate that. And then in the community itself, and just to kind of give y'all a little background, the two rival high schools are literally 5 minutes away from each other, but we share one middle school as a feeder. And then on top of that, both band programs had been on a major decline for like at least a 8 to 10 year span. So the popularity of the programs were like, we don't really care. So again, I think it's just kind of like you said, it relates to where you are in your location, your community, and what would be beneficial. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, I would pay $100 for those passes. I sit in my daughter's line right now. We pull up and I just got to park the car and before and after school. And after school is worse because that's when the temperature hit 107 degrees, and you sitting out there in the car and you think the air is going well, and actually the air getting hotter because the car getting hotter, and you like, good God. And you shouldn't be in the car sweating with the air on, but you waiting in line for your kid. I'm going on a long tangent about this, but it's really making me mad. I really need this pass right now. I need to incorporate that. I know my wife is listening. Hey, you listening? We need to do this. We need to figure this out, and we need to put that together and present it. So once we done, we're gonna talk about that upstairs. But yeah, no, I think that you're absolutely right. Fundraising and those different ways and areas of fundraising is definitely important. I'm gonna be real. I'm always default to food though, because to me that's just the easiest way to do it. But I did want to try to bring that up because you just never know what other situations people are in. It's funny. It's funny when I tell people some of the stories that I've been through because they'll sit back and they be like, "Dang, really?" And I'm like, yeah, these are the things that I've been through. These are the challenges that I've experienced. And to be quite honest, and this is why and I feel like these conversations are important because there are people who are experiencing some of these things that they just don't know what the result or the way to get to the next level. And we have to have these conversations in order to be able to give those answers. And so that's why I felt it was important to be able to ask that question because fundraisers are definitely important for your band program. Yes, it's always good to be able to have money in the pot, but it ain't nothing better than having extra money. And that extra money will take you a long way. And if you got that zero budget that a lot of people walk into, those fundraisers are definitely necessary in order to keep that band program moving. And as Derek said earlier, keep that interest within the program. So
Now I was gonna say, man, in the event that you do a food thing, you should not just do food. I think that's where people miss the mark. Like, okay, I'm gonna sell spaghetti dinner plates and that's it. No, sell desserts, get them all donated. Do door prizes. Then have that separate from the fee from paying for a meal. Then have a silent auction simultaneously and a live auction. Like, just tax it, tax it, tax it. And if you do with good products, I remember back in the day, the iPad was the thing. I always got an iPad donated. That was the top raffle item, and it was like door prize, door prize. So what I would do is, because it was labeled a door prize, it was legal in the state of Texas versus it being a raffle. Now, you use the term raffle, you're going into the gambling thing. And so as long as that person, and you even put it, not need to be present to win. So we were able to do pre-sale door prizes. You get what I'm saying? So it's like there are loopholes in doing that. And then so you get X amount from doing spaghetti, you get X amount from the door prizes, X amount from, and hopefully by then it's all profit. And so the only thing that might be of cost would be your spaghetti, and then hopefully that's at lower cost and you maximize your profit. Those were some of the best fundraisers that I ever did, was spaghetti night dinners with performances all evening, like literally almost like a festival of sorts. It was this band, and then I would let even individual students that had guitar talent jump on and do a little small gig. It was just a showcase of talent all night, and at the end I would wrap it up with the live auction.
Hey, I would like to add something too. And I forgot to mention this when I was talking about fundraising. Um, Displaying what your targeted need is. What, like, some people will just give you money because you say we're raising money for this. Some people will not give you money if you don't say what you are raising money for, or you just raising money for the band. That's too broad for a lot of people. But if you say, hey, we're raising money for our windsuits, which are going to cost us $4,000, they'll give money towards that. They know it's a targeted need. They know exactly what their money is going to. But some people have an issue with just, oh, you want me just to donate? Oh, you want me just to pay for this? What is it going towards? What is it? Like, I'm not just going to give my money up for nothing. So I ran into a lot of that. And I kind of learned from that. So every time I had a fundraiser, I was saying, hey, we're doing this so we can buy a new set of drums, or whatever it may be. So if you target your need and tell them what you want, some people will just even give you money, won't even buy whatever you're selling. It's like, hey, I just want to give you money. I don't eat spaghetti, but here, take this.
Mm-hmm. Man, I'm glad you said that, because most of my career has been majority extremely lower income students, but I had a few I remember I'll never forget. It was an Asian band parent. He's sitting in the back like this with his hands like legs crossed, and he came up to me. He's like, "Look, Eric, I'm not going to volunteer. I'm not. I'm just be honest with you. You're not. You might not even see me after this meeting. I'll give my daughter a donation tomorrow, and use it at your however you want to use it." So the daughter like, "Here you go, Mr. Jimenez." He hands me a little envelope, and I open it. It says $500, and I'm like, "What?" Because you're right. Sometimes it's like they don't have the time, but they understand the importance of supporting. Or adversely, if you have a parent who can't give financially, you can promote that they can come and help. They can volunteer their time, they can serve food, and that's just as valuable. But it takes on us to acknowledge that investment on that parent versus like, well, why aren't you donating anything? Why don't you have anything to give? And that's how I really brought in my Latina moms. It was with food. They were like, oh, you need me to cook something? All right, I got you. And potluck all day. And so those are the moments of like figuring. That's why I stress know your community and use those strengths versus trying to impose what we don't already do in our communities. So like when I sold silent auction to them, they were like, what is that? You know what I mean? But then when I did it for them and they're like, oh, we could do this by next year, this is easy. We just got to go get donated items. And like, literally, that's it. Go and shake the trees of our community and just ask for donations. And we'll market their program. We'll do all the marketing aspect. But it's all of that, putting it together. Because I genuinely love doing those things. And I think that's probably my strength of why I can do well in Consumer too, is that it was like I sold band. When people ask me, like, how did you get people to join the band? I was like, I sold the idea of band to kids that had no idea what this was. And so after that second week, I really don't. I don't want to do this. This ain't for me. I'm like, you don't know this ain't for you until you try. It's been 2 weeks. Give me till December, and then in December, I'll let you quit. I'll walk you to the counselor's office. I didn't get not one person to come to me in December and want to quit because by that time they had already ridden the bus, they had the experience of a football game, etc. All the things that we fell in love with the activity. But it's a matter of really knowing who we're serving and capitalizing on that. Because one thing I really want to like in the Latino community, we do this thing called padrinos, sponsors. So if you've ever been to a quinceañera, it is not taboo to go and ask your family members and close ones, can you donate to this event? Can you cover the DJ? Can you cover the mariachi? Can you cover part of the food? And it's like, what? You're asking me for money? No, it's literally like, I'd be proud to. I'd be proud to give. I'd love to. For example, for my sister's wedding this Saturday, I'm one of the sponsors for her DJ. But we don't transfer that in the Latino community to the things that we want to do in the advancement in the United States. So, for example, if it costs money to go to a camp, I even promoted this, and I see our buddy Rick on right now. A student told me, I can't afford tomorrow's drum corps. And I told the mom, I was like, did you have padrinos for your wedding? She's like, oh, yeah. I was like, then do that for your son for drum corps. Like, now knowing that, it's not taboo for me to say, I would donate towards that. But it's knowing, again, that's why I stress, know your community and take their strengths and just implement it into our educational system.
Yeah. So first thing I want to say is, you guys brought up a whole bunch of stuff, man, that I absolutely agree on. And that just goes back to the spaghetti dinners that we had at Willeridge. I mean, it was a lot to the spaghetti dinner. It was spaghetti. It was concert band, marching band, small ensemble. It was everything, drumline performing, and you got to sit down and you got a meal. I'm just saying it's you got to continue to build in your fundraisers, and I definitely agree with Eric that you can get 15 other things going on and under one roof of one fundraiser. So you're absolutely right. The other thing I want y'all to realize, y'all see Eric a hustler, right? Y'all see you see he a hustler. So just letting y'all know, you don't know what he did back in the underground. No, I'm saying, but no, I mean, I just know that Eric is just a wealth of knowledge, and so he can give you the game. He's been in it for a good number of years, about 3 years longer than I was, but in that time, I mean, he's just done a lot, and so he can unload on you a lot of information. So, but at the end of the day, man, band programs definitely need funding, and we need to continue to advocate for ways to push funding into our band programs, specifically our inner city schools, because they need it, the kids need it, they deserve it, and the directors need it too. I really appreciate what Eric said, and the idea of the funding also being used to help the director be better. And that's the other thing that we sometimes we fail to have that conversation about, is the directors being better. We just kind of take them as they are and say, all right, here you go, figure it out, you know. But there's a lot of times when we need to advocate for our directors being better, and a lot of times that funding can't do it. So with that being said, man, I just want to say I appreciate both of you guys for being on the show. This is definitely a needed show. This information is needed for anybody who is either in the trenches right now, on the way to graduating, looking to graduate, looking to get a program. You need this information. So guys, share this information out. Don't just let it sit right here on this channel. Share it out to your friends, share it out to your colleagues, share it out to your students. It's all needed. And before we get out of here, I always like to do this, man. I like for everybody to just kind of tell us what you got going on and where people can find you. So we'll start with you, Derek. What you got going on? Tell people where they can find you, bro.
Like I said earlier, I'm currently in graduate school. I actually have some homework to do as soon as I get off this stream. Jesus. Um, I mean, you can find me on social media platforms. Type in my name. It's Derek J. Wright. It's spelled Derik though, so it's a little different. I should be the first one to pop up. Nobody spells their name like me. Yeah, man. But you can find me. I'm going to be adjudicating a few marching competitions this fall. So you might see me between Hampton Roads, and I'm supposed to be doing the Eastern competition as well. And anytime you want to ask me a question, or even if you just want to, because I love learning information. And, I don't think no matter how old, how experienced you are, because I'm definitely not either. You can always learn something. So if you have some things, like you might have heard me say something tonight, and you have, maybe some insight or something, I'm definitely always a sponge. So yeah.
Man, well, first, thank you for having me, Julian. I know we've been talking, me coming on here for a minute, and so I'm really appreciative of that opportunity. I'm on pretty much every social media platform. My handle is E Jimenez, just like my first initial, my last name, and then 86. And then shameless plug for my podcast at Pod the Score. So if you would love to come on over and listen, we're at episode 96, approaching 100. And so we're really focusing on really expanding our reach even with that platform. And then for work, because I do this work as well and supporting you, and if I'm not in charge of the territory that you reside in, there's somebody at Consummer that can help. And so if it means even me connecting you with the appropriate person in your territory, I'm more than willing to do that. And that's what we're here to do. And if you haven't heard of our Division of Education, we're a really, really good group of folks that want the best for folks. And if you know about Consummer, we're a big, and when I mean big, supporter of HBCU bands, where other folks just talk about it. We come from them. There are alums working at the company. There's 3 of us specifically, myself, Shuni, and Will Irvin. And so I know both of y'all know Shuni very well, since she speaks highly of both of y'all. Hit us up, whether it be through my email, ejimenez@consummer.com. It's just, I would love to chat, to support, to get you to the next level. For example, shout out to my boy Bailey. I see him on here as well. I'm working with him just to give him a price point on a new Ludwig drum line. And so it starts there. It's like, all right, how do we get the people, the powers that be, to find out, hey, I need X amount to get this. You want a drum line? Well, here's what it costs. Like, people, again, can talk about it, but it's until we get that advocate. I just want to be part of that. Like, because in my mind, another instrument in the kid's hands is creating access to music education.
All right, now you can't be on here preaching Sunday then already passed. Now we got a couple more days before we get back to Sunday now. But man, y'all go check out Eric and Justin on the Score podcast. I'm telling you, the podcast is dope. I've been listening for a very, very long time. Quan listens quite often, and as a matter of fact, Quan is not here. He was supposed to be here tonight, but very similar to Derek, he had homework to do tonight. If you all do not know, he's taking care of some business, some very good business. He's excelling his brain and moving forward. So we want to continue to support him on that. So that's why he was missing on tonight. But again, once again, I am so excited to have you guys on. Eric, again, yeah, I have been trying to get you on for a minute, and I am so glad that you were like, yeah, I'm on, bet. But you know, at any point, man, you guys are always welcome to come back on the show. Derek, you've been on here like 450 times now. You know, but at any time, man, you guys are always welcome to come back on the show. I think the information that you guys have given has been amazing. And we're just going to continue to continue to advocate for band programs on all spectrums, but for the most part in our communities, in the inner cities, HBCUs and so on and so forth, man. So again, I appreciate you guys. On next week, we are bringing back the feature. Now, if y'all don't remember what the feature is, that was the show that Maya was running, or that Maya was the host of, and then you had Sean and Portia. Well, unfortunately, Maya has left us, but we are bringing back the feature for one night only, and that's going to be on next week, on next Wednesday. So you don't want to miss that. Why? Because we are going to be talking all auxiliary. We're talking color guard. We're talking dance lines. Who's looking good? What things can be working on? What misconceptions that we may have? So you guys got to stick around. If you're watching this on playback, go ahead and click that like button. Don't even wait on it. Also, if you're watching tonight and you have not subscribed to the Passionate Network, subscribe and turn notifications. I have nothing else. This has been a great episode, and we will see you all on next week.